this TP-Link router situation, is this something that we should be concerned about?
I think anytime that you have an inexpensive piece of hardware that is widely adopted and you think that there are either potential vulnerabilities in it, whether by design or by flaw, you should absolutely be concerned. The main thing, what do we do when we're online? What information are we transmitting? In many cases, it's things with your passwords, things with your credit cards, things with your bank logon, and all of those things that are keeping you secure. So anything that has a potential vulnerability for yourself is definitely a concern.
So, what are these vulnerabilities in the TP-Link routers?
Well, there's a varied number of them that they're talking about, whether it's Microsoft or others. The real comment is that these are simply ways for people to get into your network without you knowing. And there's a multitude of ways for that to happen. So it's the same, no different than if you go to the mall and you get on the Wi-Fi and people think that that is secure. The reality is it's not, and other people are getting onto that network. They're sniffing the network. That means that they're finding other devices that are connected that are not secure and going to places to get your personal information. It's the same thing. What's worse is that in a public environment, there are protections that you would make. You might download a private VPN, which is just an app on your phone that you would use to make a public location secure. But you're not going to do that if it's your home because you would feel that it's secure. So you have a false sense of security if you're using a product that has a known capability for an outside source or manufacturer to get in.
So, is that what? So, this article here by CNN that I was reading, it says US officials are concerned that cheap and ubiquitous routers made by TP-Link could offer a foothold for China-backed hackers into US infrastructure. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Like how does it create a foothold?
Well, what they're saying is think in terms of not a singular attack, but a mass attack. If you had, millions of those devices rolled out and all of them had the same backdoor capability, meaning somebody was able to gain control remotely, would they be doing one thing to attack one location or would they be attacking a wide range all simultaneously? That is what would gain a foothold, is if suddenly there was a massive attack and that attack use the capability of underpriced products that people bought unknowingly, thinking that it's a good deal. But the reality that has either a design flaw that was accidentally placed or a design flaw that was potentially placed purposely.
So, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, anytime that you have a hardware compromise, the answer is change the hardware. It's different than software. Software, like on your phone or online, you can change your password. You can enable multi factor authentication. These are things that, it sends a text message to your device with an extra number or something like that. The reality is, when you have a compromised device that's hardware in your infrastructure, what you need to do is you need to get something new and that has the appropriate security protocols. And that way you eliminate the threat. Because the truth is, if you don't know what those threats are, what those issues are, even if there's one hole, and on a router or a firewall, we talk about ports being open. That's a common IT term. Close a port. That's like, I want to see a camera in my house, and your IT person will say, oh, I opened a port for that. Well, if you think you close those holes, but in reality, there are using that term backdoor, the reason it's a backdoor, and that term means you're unaware of its existence, right? So if you're unaware of its existence, how can you close it? If you can't close it and you're remotely worried that in fact that it's there, swap the hardware and you remove that point of failure.
So, swap the hardware basically means get a new router.
Buy a new router, buy a new switch, buy a new product. There is a potential, the implication, which we don't know if it is or is not true, but the implication is if there are products being sold below the cost to produce it, why would that be done? If it would be done to gain, the main thrust of that would be to gain adoption. If you gain adoption because it was so inexpensive, that's what could lead to that foothold. So there is the question, that is the pricing part of that? Is the pricing that enticing that it allows adoption? And when you have adoption with something that has a backdoor, then it leads to the next step. And we always say, if it's too cheap or it's too good to be true, it likely is. This could be a case like that.
So like not only are homeowners or like you know that they have these routers, but it's also the US government, the military. So what I mean, that's kind of scary, isn't it? I mean, what does that mean?
Well, what it means, like with any cyber attack that anyone has ever experienced, you have to find your point of failure or point of failures if it's plural, and you have to plug those areas. So, the reality is most of these devices, if they're routers or switches, they're sitting behind firewalls, and someone will have to either, typically go through the firewall or gain access to a computer inside. The truth is that most cyber attacks don't occur by going through the firewall. It goes by remotely taking over a computer or accessing a remote credit card terminal. Once someone is in one of those, which is behind the firewall, then they're able to get to the switch and get access to other aspects of the network. And that's exactly what this is. Now, homeowners, as an example, the average homeowner does not have a firewall. This is something usually used in offices and buildings and larger infrastructure. So, you're not necessarily even having that first layer of protection. But any one of us that have had the experience of, let's say you have an IT department and they say, I'm going to send you a link. And if you click on that link and I open it, I can remotely take over your computer. That's an example where if someone does that, they're bypassing the firewall and have gained direct access to the network. So if someone does that and you have a device that is compromised, they'll be able to get into that device and launch whatever that they, attempt to launch. So we have to be vigilant. Part of this is replacing devices. Other parts of it are having the knowledge and the education to allow your gut, if it tells you that something is suspect, to not work with that party. So much of cybersecurity is education as much as it is hardware and software. It's not clicking on that link. It's not, answering the telephone call and sending someone, a $200 payment by an Apple card or an Amazon payment. This is so widely adopted as terms of different ways to gain access to your information.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that probably covered most of it. I hope I've answered all your questions.
Yes, you definitely did. The main points were, like, should we be worried about this? And if so, like, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Well, I think the first question the average person needs to ask themselves is, am I transmitting information that's sensitive? And many people will say no, and I would actually discredit that. Your credit card information that you put in is sensitive. Your date of birth, your social security number, your address, the information to file your taxes, going onto your bank's website. All of those things are riding on your network, whether it's in your house, on your internet, on your Wi-Fi, at the mall, at Starbucks. So, you want to make sure that you are being vigilant. I do tell people that the average cyber attack is attempting to get, for most part, either banking information or personal information for identity theft. So you want to think to yourself about using that strong password, changing passwords if you're concerned, and, anything that has multi-factor authentication, that just means sending a code to your phone or using an app as a second way to any one of your devices. You should always enable that. Change those passwords if you're remotely concerned. And if you are on a public Wi-Fi situation, I recommend downloading an app that's called a VPN, that's a virtual private network, to your phone. They're not that expensive, $30 to $50 per year. I know that to many people is a lot of money. However, when you compare the cost of that to actually the result of identity theft or access to one of your banks or your accounts, it's a pretty small investment. And the last I would say is, from a financial standpoint, lock your credit. That way, even if somebody steals your identity, they cannot take out credit cards and loans. You can call the 800 number for free for TransUnion, for Equifax. They'll do that for you for free. Or you can download the app, and from the app, lock it there as well.